Hello, everyone. This week we've been talking about dividing, and we've been talking about dividing with decimals. So on Monday, we talked about dividing whole numbers. On Tuesday and Wednesday, we talked about dividing with the dividend decimal and dividing with the divisor decimal. So now, on our last day of dividing, we are going to talk about dividing with both a dividend and a divisor decimal. So that means both numbers will have a decimal point in them. So before we go into dividing and practicing dividing, we're going to talk about the order. As always, the order of dividing is: does McDonald's sell burgers regularly? So D stands for divide, M is multiply, S is subtract, B is bring down, and R is repeat. We repeat the whole process again. So, as always, our rules for dividing are: the divisor, which is the number we divide by, goes outside the house, and our dividend is the number being divided by, or being divided, is the number that goes inside the house. So we color code ours red for dividend and blue for divisor. And as always, the first number in the problem is the number that goes inside the division house, which is our dividend. So I'm already going to push this up. We have 3 problems we're going to do today. And we are going to go ahead and we are going to start working on these together. So my first example is going to be 2.5, which is our dividend. So I'm going to write this in red. 2.5 goes in the house, while the number 0.5 goes outside. Now, when we are talking about dividing, we know that the dividend number, that red number, we don't move the decimal if that's the only decimal on the paper. However, since there is a divisor decimal, the first thing we are going to do is change our divisor from a decimal point to a whole number. So to do that, let me grab my different pen. To do that, I am going to move the decimal point over to the right 1 spot. So now I have a new number, which is 5. Because I have a decimal in the dividend, I also have to move that same decimal point over to the right 1 spot. So now I'm left with a new problem. So I'm going to rewrite my problem, and I'm going to rewrite it as 25 is now my dividend, the number that goes inside the house, while 5 is the divisor, the number that goes outside. And the decimal point is now at the end of 25. So I'm going to go ahead, move that up, put it above the house, and I'm going to leave my blanks so that I know how many numbers I should have in my answer. Unless, of course, I have to add numbers after the decimal. So here we go. 5 goes into 2 0 times, because 2 is smaller than 5, so it cannot be divided by 5, which means the number on top of the house in that place value is 0. 5 times 0 is 0. Now I have to subtract. 2 minus 0 is still going to be 2. My next step is I bring down the next number. That's the number 5. And now I have the number 25, and I repeat the whole process. Well, I can think to myself, well, 5 times 5 gives me 25, which means 25 divided by 5 is 5. So 5 times 5, we already know, is 25. I'm going to go ahead and subtract them, and I get 0. So my answer of 25 divided by 5 is the number 5, which is the same as saying 2.5 divided by 0.5 also equals 5. That was pretty easy. So let's keep going and see if it gets a little bit tougher. So Now I have 30.9 or 30 and 9 tenths divided by 3 hundredths. So I'm going to go ahead and write this out. I'm going to put 30 and 9 tenths inside the division house because that is the first number in the problem. That is what is being divided. And 0.03 is a number that goes on the outside because that is the divisor. So now I have to start by moving the divisor point because I need to get that to a whole number to be able to divide. So I'm going to count 1, 2 spaces, and I moved it over 2 spaces. And what I do to the outside divisor, I have to go to the inside dividend. I have to do the same thing. So I'm going to count 1, 2 places. And I have to now add in an extra 0. So when I rewrite my problem, my new problem is going to be on the inside of the house. I'm going to have 3,090 divided by the number 3. So now I can go ahead and divide. But before I do that, I forgot an important step. I forgot that I need to put my decimal point at the end and bring it above the house. And I need to go and put my 4 place values because there are 4 numbers inside the house. Now I can start dividing. 3 can be divided by 3 one time because 1 times 3 is 3. My next step is to subtract. 3 minus 3 is 0. I now bring down my next number and I still get a 0. And now I start the process again. Well, 3 can go into 0 times because 0 times 3 is always going to be 0. I subtract, get 0, and I bring down my next number, which is 9. Okay, let's do it again. 3 goes into 9, 1, 2, 3 times because 3, 6, 9. Skip counting. So 3 goes into 9 3 times because 3 times 3 is 9. I subtract it, I get 0. Then I pull down my next number. And I can't stop there because even though this is 0, I still have to fill in that last place value. So 3 goes into 0, 0 times, because 0 times 3 is 0. I subtract it, I get 0. Since I have no remainder, I'm done. So the answer of 3,090 divided by 3 is 1,030, which is the same as saying 30 and 9 tenths divided by 3 hundredths would be 1,030. Great job, guys. So we only have one more to go. So my last problem, I'm going to scoot it over. My last problem is 4.48 divided by 1.4. So 4 and 48 hundredths divided by 1 and 4 tenths. So first step, as always, we are going to write this out as a regular division problem. 4 and 48 hundredths goes on the inside of the house because it is the dividend. It's that first number. And 1 and 4 tenths goes on the outside because that is the divisor. So my next step is to move the decimal point in the divisor because I want to get this to a whole number. So I only have to move my decimal point one place. So I'm going to end up with this. When I rewrite it, I get 44 and 8 tenths divided by 14. Before I can start dividing, I need to bring my decimal point up. And then I also need to put some place value holders in. So it looks like on this problem, I might end up with a decimal point. Let's see. Let's work it out. 14 cannot go into 4 because 4 is smaller than 14. So that means that I have to put a 0 in that first point. So 0 times 14 is 0. Then I subtract. 4 minus 0 is 4. And I have to bring down my next number. Now I have 44. So I have to figure out how many times does 14, go into 44. Well, I know over the course of the week we've been doing this problem. So I know that 3 times 14 will give me 42. So I'm 2 away. So I have to subtract. I have a remainder of 2. And I bring down the next number. So I'm not bringing down the decimal point. I'm just bringing down the number because the decimal point has already been added to the top of my answer. So I bring down an 8 and I get 28. So I think to myself, 14 plus 14 is 28. So that means that 2 times 14 will give me 28. Now that I have that, I'm done. I subtract. I get 0 remainder. So that tells me I'm done with my problem. And 44 and 8/10 divided by 14 would give me 3.2, which is the same answer as 4 and 48/100 divided by 1.4. So my answer is going to be 3 and 2/10. Now that we've gone over dividing with a decimal in the divisor and the dividend, it's now your turn to show what you know.